And now from 1942, 43, let's go to the year 1950. It was the Korean War. And you'll hear a lot of different names after the word Korean aircraft talk about. Because men went over there, served the country, and died. Let's just call it a war. Some of the piston-powered, propeller-driven aircraft of World War II were pressed into service, like the P-51, which, because the Air Force came into being on its own in the late 1940s, North American F-86 Sabre that you're looking at now. We captured German aerodynamical data, and it found that the Germans had studied the swept-wing design. And their paper showed that it delayed the onset of buffet boundary. Well, we captured that information after the war. It was part of the spoils, and so did the Russians. They got some of the brain power from Germany, and so did we. And we got documents, and we got data that showed that this was the way to go. Now you're talking about speed that neared the speed of sound in normal flight. And that was considered astronomical speed back in 1950. See that sweep back from where the wing attaches to the fuselage back to the forward tip? That's the key to speed. In fact, so much so, only 8 months after General Chuck Yeager broke the speed of sound for the first time, quite by accident, George Welsh, who was a North American aviation test pilot, put his F-86 in a shallow dive over Edwards Air Force Base, which is home of the right stuff, and quite by accident broke the sound barrier. You know what? They kept that a secret for a good number of years. They didn't let that out until several years ago. Now they are admitting that that's true. And he did it in a stock F-86. Early on, with the basic models of the two opposing jet fighters, the MiG-15 and our F-86, they were pretty much equal. The MiG-15 was lighter, about 5,000 pounds lighter. That always counts. The thrust from the jet engines were about the same. The speed was about equal. In fact, the Russians had an advantage because their aircraft was light. It could go higher than our airplanes did. Theirs went to 51,000 feet. Ours went to 48,000 feet. They could turn tighter because they were lighter. But we had a superior gun device on ours. They had cannons, we had machine guns, and they had to sight their guns, and we had an automatic device for that. So our guns were more deadly. But early on in the war with the basic machines, these two airplanes might have been the same one. That is, that we might settle on the 10-to-1. That is, for every one of our Sabres that got shot down, our pilots shot down 10 of the enemy's MiGs. Now the true figure may be a little less, a little more than that, depending on whose history book you read. But that's pretty accurate. And why was that? It goes back to training. Pilots that flew this airplane for us were trained. Some of them were World War II veterans. They were happy with the jet. That's what made the difference. They only had a real challenge when they were up against a Soviet pilot that had World War II experience and was familiar with the MiG-15. So we talked to you about November of 1950, then just a couple of months later, in December of the year 1950, in fact December 17th, was a lieutenant colonel flying an F-86. His name was Lieutenant Colonel Bruce Hinton. And Colonel Hinton shot down a MiG-15. That went into the history books as well because it was the first time that was ever documented that two, that is, purely swept-wing fighters had engaged in a dogfight, and one of those had won. Very important date in history. These Sabres were working over a portion of the land called MiG Alley, where you could go mix it up with a MiG in the air. Against the inexperienced North Korean and Chinese pilots, our pilots had a trick, and that trick, as the F-86s got more and more sophisticated, was merely to start to engage the enemy in a tight 360-degree turn. As you made that turn, you, as an F-86 pilot, started to tighten it up more and more. Now, the other pilot didn't want you on his tail, so he would tighten up his turn more and more as well. At this show, for many years, you watched the great flying of R.A. Bob Hoover, who had a long and brilliant career as a test pilot with North American Aviation and the Rockwell Company. He was the boss who put this airplane through its paces. And then even though he was a civilian, factory representative and technical representative for the military, he would actually go on actual military missions with the pilots. For many years, he couldn't say anything about it. Now he does, and in the evening when we've had dinner and talked about it, he'd say, well, he'd say, I just couldn't tell the boys how to go fly it and stay back. He said, I had to go out there with them. I wanted to show them confidence with the airplane. And unless I was out there shooting with them or bombing bridges,